Hello, welcome to Tykes Tv. I've got a very distinguished guest on here, and people might hear him a lot and not see him a lot on screens. But Rob Staton from BBC Radio Sheffield, Sports Football 11. Rob, appreciate you very much for taking your time out of your busy schedule, mate.
No, thanks for the invite, Neil. Pleasure to be here.
I've always spoke a lot on, and I normally say like good evening, but this time it's going a bit other way around. It's more about you, Rob. I mean, I asked Adam Moxley a fair few months ago, like now, about getting into sports journalism and stuff like that. So going back a bit, when you were at school, what is something you always wanted to be? What or were you wanted to be like a footballer or something like that? What were you interested in getting into sports journalism?
I became addicted to football when I was very young, and it was very obvious at an early age that I was not going to be a footballer. So I was kind of like looking around for the next best thing, just to, what would be the best thing to do in life.
Mm,
And I'd say probably about 13, 14 years old, I decided that the best thing to do would be to talk about football and to be a football commentator. So I used to watch the TV even at that age and turn the volume off and commentate along. And then when I went to Thomas Rotherham College, there was an opportunity to go and volunteer at hospital radio at Radio Nightingale, which is
mm,
the best thing I ever did in my life. So I went down to the station there, and for about a year, they had me cleaning the floors and making the cups of tea, and then I'd go around the wards and ask people for requests and would take them back. And after about, I'd say about 8, 9 months, they would let me do the odd bulletin, and then they would let me do shows. So I used to do a request show on a Friday night, and then I'd do a sports show Saturday morning, and then there was like the religious show on a Sunday when they had the church service that I would come in and do.
mm,
So I'd do that, and then after I did that for a while, I'd kind of done the rite of passage thing, and they said, "Do you want to commentate on Rotherham United?" And I was like, "Wow." And at the time, Rotherham were in the Championship. So what's now the Championship was Division One then.
mm.
So they were playing like loads of good teams. Like they're playing like West Ham and teams like that at Millmore. And yeah, I got to go and do the commentary there. The station manager would do it with me. He would commentate when Rotherham had the ball. And then when the away team had the ball, it was up to me to commentate. So that's how it worked there. And that was, yeah, I was terrible. Like I've still got the tapes from that. From my mum used to tape. It used to be on long wave radio, so she would tape it, and then I would listen back to my commentaries. And I wasn't very good, but for some reason, people kept giving me opportunities. So then from there, when I went to university, the club Rotherham United said, "Do you want to be our club commentator?" So I used to go home every weekend and commentate for Rotherham. And then when I left university, I went to live in Canada for a bit, and then I came back, and then I started commentating for Rotherham again and what was Miller's World at the time,
Mm.
and did that. And then I started working in the steel industry. So I used to do drives up and down to South Wales and the northeast Teesside. I got Old Walk in Rotherham, um, doing a steel industry job, and then on Saturdays I commentate for Rotherham. And I have to be honest, Neil, uh, I was that close to jacking it in because
Really? Wow.
it just didn't feel like it was going anywhere. Like
Yeah.
I was probably about 23, 24. I didn't feel as if it was ever going to happen for us. And then I owe everything to Seth Bennett at Radio Sheffield because he just as I was thinking, I'm not sure this is ever going to lead to anything. Why am I still doing this for free? He got in, he reached out and gave us a chance along with Paul Walker to be the Rotherham United commentator for or reporter for Radio Sheffield, and like the rest's history. I've loved every second working at Radio Sheffield, but yeah, it was quite a long process to get there.
Yeah, two names from past for you, Seth Bennett and Paul Walker. Wow,
Yeah,
there's some names. Yeah,
well, I owe everything to them.
yeah.
Like, if it wasn't for them, I'd probably still be working in the steel industry now.
Mm,
So I, can't say anything but the highest of praise for those two for giving me an opportunity
mm.
um, when they didn't have to. So I will always respect them for that and owe everything to them.
Yeah, I mean, I, I could see joy in your face when you were talking. You were like reminiscing through here and stuff like that. When you're on about like hospital radio and stuff like that, and it's always refreshing and rewarding. It's like me. I mean, I was never going to be a footballer, but I've always loved the sport. I've always loved football, and in your own mind, it's like led to where I'm now currently at Tykes TV, and I owe Adam Oxley massive thanks, and a lot of people at Radio Sheffield as well, because sometimes I'll get a call from nowhere, or do you mind coming on show, from Andy Giddins and this over, and I remember it was Neil. In fact, it was last season, Neil Collins's last job, Blackpool away, and our co-commentating with Adam Oxley. And I remember it because I think it was supposed to be Daniel Nardiello, but for some reason, or Adam Animal, he couldn't make it. I'm like, oh, can you be there? I went, yeah, I'm stopping in Blackpool. So it was like a bit of a rush, and this is how it's going to go. And I don't know how to come across, but what refreshing for me is Andy Clark, who used to be at Barnsley Football Club and has gone to Hull City as the head of media and all that kind of stuff. Out of nowhere, I was just getting messages. Oh, I've heard that you're on Radio Sheffield. Congratulations! And little things like that, you think, oh wow, it's like it gives you a bit of a boost kind of thing. So it's like sport. I love sport, and coming on to sport. Obviously, it's Yorkshire, and I always keep an eye out for teams, and there'll be like rivalries between Wednesday and Barnsley, and little things go off like that. But interesting to find out as well with you, Rob, about American sport, NFL. I mean, how did that come into it? When you went over to Canada, did that play a part in it, or was it something completely different?
Well, first of all, Neil, you did a terrific job on that commentary, and you're a natural. So
Oh, appreciate it.
we need to find a way to get you back on.
All right, mate.
Uh, with the NFL stuff, it was when I was in Canada, and when I was living in Canada, and I worked at Levi's in Canada, and I started off on the minimum wage in Canada, which was $5, which is about £2.50 an hour, and then by the time I left, I was assistant manager of this store in Levi's. I was pretty much running it because the guy who was the manager he'd basically come in the morning, say I've got to do this, and he'd shoot off, and then he'd leave everything to me for 14 hours. So it was quite an interesting time, and everybody used to work there, and I was the only English person there. But you had a lot of Aussies who were in Vancouver, and a lot of Irish, and a lot of people had moved over from Japan and Korea and settled in Vancouver, and they all followed American football and ice hockey. And I used to go in and I'd wind them up saying, American football, it's just rugby with pads on. Like, where we're from, we have rugby, and it's they don't need to wear all that stuff. And I did that for about a year, and then me and my girlfriend at the time, we've now been married a long time, said we were going to go to Seattle for a day trip, and we went past the football stadium there, and I thought it'd be great to come back and just watch a game there.
Mm.
And I went in, and we went back to Seattle a few months later, and we went to a game, and it was just the most amazing experience. It was, when you just sort of catch the bug for something, and I can remember catching the bug for our football, and I went out there, and I just loved everything about it, and it wasn't so much the sport itself, it was the fans, it was the way that the team had that connection with the fans, and there was home and away fans sat up with each other, and they weren't trying to kill each other. It was brilliant. And I've not missed a game of the Seahawks since, and it's filled a hole for me, because I know that there's always this kind of thing. I mean, there's a week doesn't go by without somebody trying to tell me that I'm an awful journalist because I hate their team or like somebody else's team, and I can legitimately say, and people never believe this, but I guess I just keep saying it, and maybe it'll sink in eventually, that when you do this job, you can't support a team. You can't be a fan. Like, you just can't. You can't walk into a ground and commentate on two local clubs, or interview a manager, or interview a chairman, or interview like that with any kind of fan attitude. You just
Yeah.
can't. The world changes for you when you become a journalist. So you lose all of that aspect. And I've not had any kind of sort of fandom in terms of local football for a while, because this is what I want to do. I want to be a professional journalist. And I've kind of transferred that part of my life to the Seahawks and to England. So I'm in the England Travel Club, and I'm not going to the game tonight against Latvia, because you typically go with Andy Giddins, and
Yeah.
he's off for a couple of weeks. So we're not going to these two. But we've been to all sorts of games. We've been to Milan together. We had a little romantic weekend, me and Gids, in Milan watching England. And then and we will go to away games if we can. I was at the Euros last year, so I've kind of transferred it all to that. So the Seahawks and England are kind of like my thing, and I'd like to follow England in any sport, cricket, rugby, football, and then the NFL has become a huge thing. And I started writing a blog on the NFL in 2008 because I didn't when I got back from Canada, I wanted to be a journalist, but I didn't know how it was going to work. So
Yeah.
I'm going to write every day. I'm just going to write something every day. So if it's a written chance, I've like almost found my voice as a writer. I'm going to practice, and if it's broadcasting, then it's broadcasting. So I started writing this blog just to practice writing every day, and now it's one of the biggest Seahawks websites in the world. And there's a great community there, and there's all these people interact with us, and I get to go on Seattle radio, and I've been on sort of national American radio and stuff like that, and it's enabled me to host the NFL show on 5 Live for a few years, and it's crazy. It's become like such a huge part of my life, and I have the single most patient wife in the world. She puts up with me having all this stuff that I do, and just lets me crack on. So I always appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of answered one of the questions what we're going to say about being journalists in Yorkshire. I mean, for sport regards, I'm a bit like that. Obviously, I'm Barnsley, that's where I support, but I also keep an eye out for other Yorkshire sides because you always wanted to see and progress, and you always look out for next like local derby, Yorkshire derby. But again, I like the cricket, England cricket, Yorkshire cricket. I love that, all the snooker, the darts, and I get where you're coming from. What you just touched on there with back in NFL, you look at your cricket and you look at like your snooker and your darts, and yeah, the fans are not segregated. They like all as one, and they just, especially at cricket, if Headingley and stuff like that, it's like a party atmosphere, and it's very very rare you see any trouble there, and it's just people just having a good time. And it's unfortunate in some cases that you in some fans and some clubs seem to have that tribal mentality. You think just there to enjoy the sport, and you kind of answered the question there when you were on about like being a journalist. You can't have a favorite team and stuff like that. Is it obviously when you commentate on a game and say it's a really good game and you call it neutral as it is, and I get it sometimes at channel when you call it out and people say, "Oh, you're being negative or you're being too happy clappy" kind of thing. Is like, well, I'm trying to call it as best I can what I'm seeing in front of my eyes. Do you get sometimes caught up in emotions and go it, or do you think no, I need to rein it in a bit because end of the day, if you're at a Wembley final and it's say Wednesday playoffs or Wednesday Barnsley final kind of thing, you've got to call it impartial. Of course, you have. Do you get sometimes because it's two York? Does it make it harder when it's two Yorkshire teams playing? I need to try and keep a balance, or do you just go with flow kind of thing, Rob?
Well, you kind of have to go with it. You can't really play it down in that instance. Like whatever was going to happen in that Wednesday Barnsley game, it was going to need some big selling because for one team at least, that's going to be a really memorable
Mm,
moment. And we actually talked a lot about that game in the build up to it because firstly, when you have two local teams in a final, we'd never had that in a playoff final before. You have to make sure that everything is balanced out. So if
yeah,
we were going to have a Barnsley guest on, we had to have a Wednesday guest. If you had a Wednesday guest, you have to have a Barnsley guest, and
yeah,
everything had to be measured all the way through it. What you do pre-match has to be measured all the way through. Like what audio you're going to play, how many fans are you going to speak to outside the stadium, and it is a challenge because
mm,
sometimes you could, for example, you could get the most amazing. There was one night I think where we got Conor Harahan on the show, and we didn't have a suitable Wednesday
yeah,
guest for the last minute, and you're worried a little bit about it because you know what the reaction's going to be,
mm,
and you always get accused. I know there's a section of Barnsley fans who are absolutely because I've seen the messages and I see the stuff and all that. They cannot stand me, and they're not alone. There's a thread on the Wednesday and United forums pretty much every month, maybe even sometimes several. You know, he hates us. He's no good. He should be fired, and all of this.
mm,
And it comes with the territory. It doesn't bother me at all, really, because you can't you drive yourself balmy if you sort of worried too much about this. But I can only speak for myself and the lads, really, that we just want it's our lives are so much easier when the teams are doing well because you can
Yeah,
just ride the wave. You can just get on there and when Michael Duff was at Barnsley and you go to Oakwell and it'd be absolutely rocking. And you used to love going to Oakwell that time.
yeah,
Like you'd walk through the door at the entrance, the press, thinking this could be a bit special this today. And I'm thinking of that Wednesday night when they won 4-2.
mm,
The Plymouth game always sticks in my mind. 'Cause, Plymouth are right up there. They won
yeah,
1-0. The Bolton playoff semi-final second leg. They were electric nights at Oakwell, and you enjoy and go in there. And then when it's like this, you go in there and the people are saying you've got to interview this person, you've got to ask these questions, you've got to do all this, and we're like, yeah, we know, we'd love to do it, but we can't force anybody to do it.
yeah,
Um, and then how you talk about things on the show. We host a radio show. I think sometimes forget that our job as radio host is to entertain and get it going a little bit. It's not to
mm,
sit there and just be really boring and plain and vanilla and not say anything interesting ever.
yeah,
And hope that someone else will do that for us.
mm,
The nights when someone rings in and lights up the days of when Brian used to do that
yeah, yeah,
are in the past. So like you have to sometimes get it going a little bit, but people don't like that. They don't want you to do that sometimes.
mm,
So it's an interesting job, but I just want all of the teams to do well because my life is easier when that happens. But what I will say in terms of like rooting interests, there are certain people that you meet, whether that's managers and players, that you just can't help but like.
mm,
You want those guys to do well.
yeah,
And you don't reflect that in your commentary or your reporting or your interviewing, but inside, you want them to succeed. You want them to do well. And that's just human nature. And luckily, we have met quite a few of those individuals over the years. We've been lucky in South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire to have people that you wanted to do well. So for that reason, I'm grateful. And there are still some people who we want to do well who are at our clubs now. And I hope they have success.
yeah. On about like what you're on about the with people and have I come across and favourite people. And again, I go back to when Michael Duff got announced. I got a call from club from Andy Clark and Andy White, both media people at the time before they moved on to Pastures New. And it what night before, and out of nowhere, it were like, "Oh, Neil, we're going to make a management announcement tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m. press conference. Can you get there?" You probably know what it's going to be, but you can't be saying anything. It's a no disclaimer, otherwise you won't be invited. And obviously, with Michael Duff. So I turns up and I'm thinking a YouTube channel turns up. You've got Sky Sports, Adam Oxford over here, Yorkshire Post, Leon, and Doug O'Kane, everybody over here. And I'm like, there's me at back. I'm thinking, weird, what happens? And all I got to tell what if you can stand there with your equipment, you might get the opportunity to ask a question, but don't be offended if you're not. You've got invited. I'm like, look, I'm here. And I set up, and I tell you what, the media people absolutely fine. I'm in your way. I'm like, no, you're fine. Soon as Michael Duff walked into that room, it was a presence, and I'm like, wow. He had that much respect. He came and he spoke very elegantly. Adam Moxley had gone first, then I think Doug came, and then it was, is there anybody want to ask any questions? And I'm like, so I went, yeah, and it went. And Michael Duff said, oh yeah. I went, oh, that's Tykes TV. And Andy Clark had already pre told Michael what were happening. So my concerns were, you've come in, we've got a great academy here. Are we going to see an influx of, youth and build it up front foundations? Bearing in mind you've done it at Cheltenham kind of thing. Spoke very well. After it, and this is what I'll always think a lot about Michael Duff. After it, he'd gone round, he like greeted all the mainstream media, like, BBC and everything like that. And he's walking out of the room and he stopped. And he turned round and he come to me and he shook my hand. He went, great to see you, dear. Like, hope I see a bit more on you. I'm going to do some official press photos and stuff like that. But you come across very well. Pleasure meeting you. Hope I meet you soon. And he walked away, and I'm like, wow. He could have easily just walked straight past you. you know, but he didn't. And for that, I always respect him. And then, like you said, Via, and this is what I'm going to get on to, like, now, more or less with the questions that you asked, great questions as well. Some baffling and bizarre answers, if I'm being honest, and stuff. Is that the one of them, and you pinpointed it so well, is that the Oakwell under Duff were bouncing, especially like you said, the Plymouth, the Sheffield Wednesday game. I and the thing is that under Collins last season and coming up to like now where we are, that's the worry, and I think it's going to take a while to come back. When you go and obviously commentate on a game, whether it be such as like Barnsley or Rotherham or Sheffield Wednesday United, when we've had the issues, and you kind of touched on it there, can as you as a journalist when you're walking in, can you sense a change in the fans or the environment that something's not right here, kind of thing? I've got to still commentate on game, but are you? Is it in your mind that you can feel certain things going off?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
At the minute of both Barnsley and Rotherham, you turn up at the grounds and it's as flat as a pancake.
Mm.
And both grounds, when the team is doing well, or Rotherham and Barnsley have had better times recently, there's just a buzz around the place. Like,
Yeah.
you just feel it, like outside, and you don't have to be a journalist to know that. Like, the
Mm.
fans will know that. Like, there's just like this little bit of electricity outside the ground amongst the fan base when things are going well. When you go inside in the press room and everybody's kind of up for it. And with both clubs, I hate to say it, but at the minute there's almost this kind of like, you're there because you have to be.
Yeah.
You've paid your season ticket and you're gonna go. And or it's because it's what you do. You go and watch the Reds.
Mm.
You go and watch the Millers. So you go because that's what you do. But you're not really enjoying it. And it's a problem for both clubs, because I think that there's just a lack of, at the minute, and this is no fault of necessarily the people like Conor Hourihane. I mean, how could it be his fault?
No. No.
But there just seems to be this like lack of binding connection between the teams and the fans,
Mm.
and you can see it when Barnsley have had their really good teams under Hecky in recent years. Even sort of when Valerian was there,
Yeah.
and then obviously with Duff. You could feel that the town came alive and just loved its football team.
Mm.
And right now, that love has gone, and they've got to try and get it back. But the problem is with fans is, if you have a plan which ultimately revolves around you get good players and you are inevitably going to lose them,
Mm.
fans will go with you as long as you keep replenishing the stocks. If you sell a player for £2.5 million and you then bringing in a player for 250 grand and they end up being the next 2.5 million
Yeah.
pound sign, and you keep doing it and you keep doing it, you accept there's going to be one or two that don't work out. But if you can keep building a team that you can be proud of, that are going to fight, that are going to play some good football, score some goals, entertain you, Oakwell, then you will live with the plan.
Mm.
The problem with those plans is they tend to be like roller coasters, and they go up and down. So you will have a period where things are going well, and you might replace a few players, and the squad gets replenished, and things kind of tick along. But then you'll have a period where you don't sign those players, and the players you're bringing in are not very good, and you're struggling. And then you're just sort of left with the fan base thinking, why are we bothering? Why am I bothering to come to this? Why am I paying my hard-earned money to come and watch a team when I know that you're going to sell a bunch of players and you're not going to replace anybody?
Yeah.
We're just going to sort of drift along, and that kind of feels where Barnsley are at the minute. And then on top of that, well, to finish that point, if they go out and sign a bunch of players in the summer that are the core foundations of the next really good Barnsley team, by Christmas time, everyone will be bought in again.
Yeah.
It's not impossible for them to do that, but
Mm.
what they can't afford to do is keep getting worse and drifting backwards and drifting towards the bottom half of League One, because then it's
Mm.
very hard to turn it around and get it back moving in the right direction. And so that is a problem. And then the other issue at Barnsley is just no stability there at the minute. You every time so you have Duff, he does well, he leaves at the first possible opportunity to go to Swansea.
Yeah.
You replace him with Neil Collins. I like Neil.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, I like
Yeah.
Neil Collins as a bloke. I've
Mm.
known him a long time and I like him. He had Barnsley in the top six. Was the football good when he got sacked? No. Were the results good? No. Was it a tough job? A tougher job maybe than people realised? I think it was.
Yeah.
And listening to that commentary that Adam did at Blackpool with the fans hammering him
Yeah.
was hard,
Yeah,
to
it
hear.
was. Yeah.
It felt too much for the situation, and he lost his job, and fine, he's gone. He's not lasted a season despite having him in the top six. And then the next manager comes in, and he lasts even less.
Even less.
You can't keep doing this, and you set the benchmark now. So let's say the next manager who comes in, what if the 12th at Christmas? Do you sack what are the fans going to say? Well, you sack Neil
Mm,
Collins for less, you sack Darryl Clark for less,
mm,
sack this manager, and they'd be well within the rights to say that.
mm.
And then, so what are the board now suddenly going to get behind the next appointment? I think it would have been useful for them to come out in that interview, Neerav, the other day, and just go, do you know what? We understand we've got a bit, we need to have a bit more of a long term plan here. So we're going to go and find the right guy. We're going to bring them in. We're going to bring them in on a contract which gives them a bit of space and a bit of time. And this is going to be maybe a 3-year project where
Yeah.
they're going to build a team that can get us back into the championship. And the objective for any team moving into the championship needs to go up with a squad that's capable of being competitive. It can't be get up by any measure and then try and build a championship team, because that's
Mm.
what Rotherham United try and do all the time,
Yeah.
and they struggle. So you've got to go up with the foundations in place, like they did when Hecky got them promoted, and then
Yeah.
they can push on from there. And then, a few years later in the championship playoffs, that has to be the plan. I don't think we heard that. I think there's a real danger here that they're just going to appoint the next Neil Collins or Darryl Clark, who will come in with a situation that is very similar to the one they faced,
Mm.
and it's going to be a struggle again. And
Yeah.
it's going to be some good wins and some good runs and some bad results and some bad runs. And there might be a mid-table team again. And then what do? Do you sack another manager? You can't keep doing this. This is not how football operates. I think Neerav made some very good points about how football, in many ways, is broken.
Mm.
You have to find you have to chase the edge then. And I think chasing the edge in this instance is getting the right manager in and building something rather than just being a hire and fire team. And that's what Barnsley have become.
You've hit nail on the head there, Rob, because it's as a Barnsley fan, and it's painful to watch. You look on like a Wembley final in playoffs and then now mid-table, and you look at the players, the class of players, and it's not just I'm not naming players, but you look at the players that we've lost, the quality of the players that we've lost, and you look at the players that's been brought in. A lot of them were being brought in, and Collins and even landed from America, and come January, a lot of them players what were brought in gone out on loan. You then look at like a young lad like Jack Shepherd, who was doing well at Bradford, he's getting good reviews at Bradford. But at the time, we were missing out on like Liam Kitchen. He'd gone. You know, we're bringing in a young lad from Pontefract College, and there's no, if a player's good enough and he's coming in, fine. But when a player is being brought in as a possible replacement for him in a year or two's time, that's fine. But we're Barnsley. We haven't got that luxury to be bringing players in and thinking, we're going to develop him, and in a year, maybe a 2 years' time, is going to be okay. We needed a player to come in and actually into the first team and hit the ground running. And I think the disappointing aspect on that on Neerav either coming over, and a lot of things is what you've touched on there, is that he didn't really come across with like any solutions. It were always when you question him, it were like, well, on paper we've got a top 3 or 4, squad. We're currently 10th in league, and like what you said, take Birmingham out of it, you've got your Wickhams, your Birminghams, your Huddersfields. Where are we then there? And what I would gain from Neerav on that is that, well, if they think we're the top 3, 4 team in that league and we're 10th, then you haven't lived up to our expectations, so you're going to go. Then you fetch another manager in. And if they don't live up to our expectations, you're going to go. So if I'm a manager looking in on that club, I'm thinking, well, if I don't meet his, like, saying playoff and we're, say, 9th or 8th, I'm going to potentially go, even though I've got a 2-year contract. And I think that's a frustrating thing as a Barnsley fan, is that, look, you employed this manager, head coach, whatever you want to call him now, and whoever's paying them paychecks for that manager, you've got to take ownership and responsibility. So we're going to back you. what do you need to do? And let him have probably a season to turn it round. Bring his own players in. Even Donald Clark said, I need about 2-3 transfer windows to get what I want. He came in August with players already been brought in. January, let's be fair, Rodriguez hadn't hit ground running. Lewis came off after an injury and he scored a last minute equaliser. But we're still lacking in depth and squad. So it's like the next coach coming in, he's probably going to have a different class of player what he wants, and here we go again. It's going to be it and hope again.
Well, a few years ago, I don't know, I can't remember what year it was now, probably about 2021, 2022. Gavin Baldwin, who is at Doncaster Rovers, Donny were under a lot of pressure. They were not doing well. There were fears that they could be like another Scunthorpe, and just sink out the Football League or Chesterfield. And he'd not done a lot of interviews, Gavin Baldwin. I mean, I apart from when I went to Hull and looked north and then came back, I'd never spoken to Gavin Baldwin, either in person or in an interview. And he'd been there for ages, so it was incredible, really, that we'd never spoken. And he didn't do interviews, and he did 2 interviews in quite a quick, short space of time. And I remember sitting down to do it, and you're thinking, this is going to be this type of interview here. And there were no time constraints. There were no like, you've only got X amount of time.
Yeah.
There was none of that stuff. It was just, here you go. Here's Gavin. Ask what you want. And we sat down and I asked him a whole bunch of questions that, really direct and, uncomfortable questions. And I could not believe how well he answered every single one. Like, he came out and said, so whenever there was anything that was obviously wrong, that the fans had said, you've got to ask about this, he conceded it. He said, yep, you're absolutely right. We've got that wrong. We've done this and we've done this and we shouldn't have done. And we got that. And that was a bad appointment, or that was a bad sign, or this was a bad decision. We totally own it. Here's how we're going to fix it. And then he would explain the thought process. And something like halfway through, you're kind of there thinking, we've got all these questions to get into and all that. And I was really impressed. Like that halfway through it, he had answered everything with, you could tell there'd been a lot of thought put into it, and that he knew that they had to own certain things, and was now providing some kind of a vision for what was going to happen moving forward, and ways and means that the club could progress. And in fairness to Doncaster Rovers, that has happened. They're no longer a team that everybody fears is going to get relegated out of League Two, and they may well get promoted this season. So I thought, after those 2 interviews, fans who had basically been baying for blood a little bit, turned around afterwards and was saying, fair play to him. That's not everybody was happy, because
no, you're always going to get
exactly. But a lot of people who were critical were suddenly. The problem here is, from reading what Barnsley fans have said, I don't think that ownership of what has gone wrong has happened as much as it could have done.
Yeah.
And no one's you don't come out and go, we've got everything wrong, we're awful. We're not expecting that. But just say, okay, here are a couple of mistakes that we made. We take ownership of that. This is the plan to now move this on. And I think if there'd have been a bit more of that, I think perhaps Barnsley fans would have gone, okay.
Yeah.
Now, I've read some stuff, and definitely I think it's, fair play to him for fronting up.
Oh, yeah.
Again, that's the first time I've spoken to Neerav in an interview. And, there are people at other clubs who, I mean, I can't remember the last time I spoke to Deshpon Chansiri. He doesn't do interviews with us. There are other people, other figures that don't talk. So he has spoken, and I think that's fair play to him for that.
Yeah.
I think it would be good to do another one of those interviews when the season's finished, and for it to be no time constraints, nothing, just a sit down interview, ask what you want, and then take some ownership of the things that have gone wrong and explain why they've gone wrong.
Yeah.
And don't be too proud to sort of acknowledge that things have gone wrong. And then talk a bit about what happens now, how this club is going to recapture the imagination of fans, why they deserve the faith of supporters who are questioning whether they're going to buy season tickets. And you get a lot of that every year. People will often, that is a threat that is made this time of year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to renew. And then often they will renew, because it's your club.
It's what you do. Yeah.
Giving up your club, you're not going to do that more often than not. think some people are getting close to that with a few of our clubs,
Mm.
but more often than not, you say that and it's you're going to renew. But try and win those people back and create the kind of momentum and buzz that is needed at Oakwell this summer. Everybody needs a lift.
Yeah.
And there are three ways to lift this football club, in my opinion. One is to get the managerial appointment right.
Yeah.
Appoint somebody who everybody goes, I can see why they've appointed that person. And it has to be a good appointment. And if they can do that, that's the first thing. The second thing is at least give the impression of a plan in the transfer market. It can't be the last week of August
Yeah.
that Barnsley are trying to sign players that are the kind of players that the fans want to see. You've got to make a couple of signings in, before the players come back or
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
after the players have come back so they can have a proper pre-season. They can do all this stuff. Sign a couple of players or, even more if you can, but
Mm.
at least get a couple in who the
Yeah.
fans can go, whoa, okay. That's it.
Maybe win some. Yeah. Yeah.
That's going to get me. I'm looking forward to watching that player at Oakwell.
Mm.
Go and do that. And then the final thing is, like I say, another interview where a vision for this football club is outlined to the supporters that everybody can buy into and invest into. Not claims of it's championship or nothing for
Mm.
us. No claims of, just saying things that sound okay. It comes across as ambitious, but don't really mean anything. And it can be
Mm.
thrown back in your face when you're 12th.
Yeah.
It needs to be sort of, this is the plan. And there are things that you can talk about. Not everything has to be a secret. You can,
Mm.
this is the plan. This is how we're going to take it forward. Come with us on the journey. And I think if Barnsley Football Club can do that, they can, that roller coaster I was talking about that is Barnsley can go back up and be
Of course it can. Yeah.
heading back skywards rather than the other way. So that's what I would hope they would do, and I hope they do it because I love going to Oakwell when it's rocking,
Mm.
and everybody does. Adam does, Andy does, we all do, and it's a cracking place to watch a game of football, and it is probably the most disappointing thing about this season that Barnsley and Rotherham have not been as good as
Mm.
perhaps a lot of people hoped.
Yeah. I'm I'm drawing comparisons to this, and it sounds really daft. Is that when we got relegated, and after that situation in Championship, and we went into League One, and obviously on channels and doing videos, said this is going to be probably the most critical point transfer we're going to do this summer is getting a decent coach and decent manager. And I know we're in the mid-table in League One at the minute, but I can see similarities. I mean, not relegation, but I can see similarities on whether they're going to appoint this summer as head coach. It's got to be like what you just said there. It's got to be someone who we think, yeah, meaning intention here. We've upped to the level. And when they appointed Duff, and I'm like, he's going to come with because he was highly regarded. He came in, he had a standard, he had a vision, he had the ambition, he knew where he wanted to go. And fair enough, it took him a month or two to get into his structure and what he wanted to do. But then when he did, wow, it had gone. And you saw that good time feel factor, bums on seats, people coming. It was, we're going on a crest of a wave here, but we're going to be going up. I look at this like now, and you just mentioned it there with season tickets, and I read it, I hear it. I did a live on Friday, people messaging in comments and stuff, and someone asked me a question, I forgot what it was, and I think it was a Bolton fan who jumped on. Obviously, the all issue was what Bolton had Dave Jones, and he said, "Neil, he says, how long do you think it's going to take? How many seasons is it going to take for Barnsley to get back to that kind of standard?" I went, "If I could press a reset button in the morning," I said, "I could say it's going to take about 3 seasons, maybe 4." I went, because I look at you look at the Wrexham, what they've done. They've come up through leagues. I went, but the worrying thing is for me at the moment is that we aren't improving. I think we missed an opportunity after Wembley final. Right, we need to build on this, but we didn't. A lot of key personnel went. Then the season after, i.e., now, some more key personnel had gone. Out of contract, whether it be Kane, Williams, Devante Cole, big chunk. Yeah, they've gone on freebies. But then you look over brought in, and it's like we're still playing catch up to them, us getting either promoted or relegated. And the aspect you've touched on it, Via. I think if Neerav, I think if Neerav had come out as in to say, yeah, do you know what? It hasn't gone well. We know that we had a brilliant transfer in January. We missed out on this. But see how the season pans out under Connor. Next season, we're going to be reassessing everything what's gone off this season, whether it be the recruitment side or the managerial situation, the footballing side. We're going to take stock in it. We're going to come back. We're going to be better. But we didn't. It seems to be like, well, data analysis is running well, and data's this, and well, this player's been out, and it seems to be like a bit of an excuse, and not like I think near,
Well, people don't want to really know about Max Waters' XG, do they? I mean, what they actually want is
yeah,
they want goals. They want players they can believe in, and the data can say this, that, and the other. I
mm,
like data. I'm not against analytics in football. You know, Andy hates XG. When XG gets mentioned, Andy does an old man's grump. You know,
yeah,
grumpy
yeah.
noise. But I quite like XG. So does Adam, and I think it is useful. It's not useful in the context of trying to prove that everything's okay.
Do you think it's XG's a good guide and not to be too dependent on like a lot of data analysts? It's always a guide, but I think sometimes at our club at Barnsley can be too data and XG driven
Well,
focus rather than that.
I think XG is best used to review an individual game.
Yeah.
Like if a team has 2 XG and a team has zero point 0.8,
Mm,
then you could say the chances are you've watched quite a one-sided game. And if that team's lost, it's not unfair to say, well, they lost, but they were dominated the match, and that's an angle you could run with in post-match analysis.
mm,
But to say a striker who hasn't got a lot of goals could have had or should have had a lot more goals, that the quality of his chances has been really good as a means to say, look, everything's actually okay. This will actually turn in the near future. When
mm,
you're in March, nearly April. It's not the excuse. I'll tell you what I think they need, Neil. I think they need somebody because this is the way they've pretty much spelt it out. You know, the club is not flush with cash. It's
mm,
losing money every year. The owners are putting money in. They are not going to be able to go out and splash the cash and bring a load of guys in who are going to, make Barnsley the next Wrexham or Stockport or
yeah.
whatever. So what they need is to get a manager with a proven track record of developing players, a proven track record of finding gems
Mm,
and then turning them into assets. And then inevitably, when those assets have gone, has got that proven track record of replacing them. Those managers are out there. And there is a manager out there who has done all of that and has 4 promotions from League One on his CV. So, if
yeah.
what I would be doing, it's not for me to tell the football club who to go and appoint.
No, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
I would go out to that individual and I would tell them, what is it going to take to get you at Barnsley Football Club?
Mm,
And then I would say to that person, what what does the setup and the structure need to be behind the scenes in order for you to have the success and deliver on everything that you have shown you can do at 2 different clubs now? Because that manager that I'm talking about when he was at Rotherham,
mm,
um, he would. I mean, to get Chiawog Benny from obscurity and turn him into a player worth millions of pounds in transfers and an
yeah.
Irish international, scoring overhead kicks against Spain or wherever he was he scored against.
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. And there's a whole bunch of players like that. The likes of Michael Smith, who he turned. They didn't sell him for any money
Lovely
in the
player.
end, but
Yeah.
turned him
Yeah.
into an absolute revelation for Rotherham at 20-goal striker in League One. Didn't just get 3 promotions at Rotherham, but also won a trophy. Won what's now the Virtue Trophy. He's now gone to Derby, which, by the way, is a really difficult job with
Yeah.
massively high expectations. Got them promoted from League One as well. The success, the promotions, the development, the ability to replace, the culture, the identity is all there. And I think that would be the best thing that Barnsley could probably do in this situation. And if that happened, then I would hope that one, that individual would get time
Mm,
and wouldn't
definitely.
wouldn't be sacked for being 7th or 6th or
Yeah.
10th.
It's got to be a project. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a project. And I would hope that the fans would also acknowledge if it's laid out as a longer term vision,
Mm,
that they would also give it a bit of time because the,
yeah.
the club's got to get out of this hire and fire 'em method. And there is, it's not the fans. Fans are never to blame for anything, apart from when they lob fireworks on the pitch, like what happened in the Steel City derby. Then they
Yeah,
get blamed for that.
yeah.
But in this instance, the fans are never to blame for anything. But pressure can get applied on clubs and owners
Mhm.
when you are calling vociferously for managers to go.
Mm.
And what is probably needed for everybody at Oakwell right now is a bit of time and a bit of patience.
Mm.
And that next manager comes in needs to have that bit of time, bit of patience, bit of understanding. They've also got to produce some green shoots. They've got to
Yeah.
they can't just get blind faith for an indefinite amount of time. There have to be signs of it turning, but provided that happens, every bad result can't be a disaster.
Mm.
You know, it can't be sack him. He's not in the top 6 in March 15th, 2026. So that's what I would pitch. What the bloody hell do I know? I just talk
No,
about
it
football on Football Ever. So
no, it's right, and the individual what you're on about, I think it'd work well with Connor as well, with his times at Derby, and I think it'd allow Connor to develop and still carry on and continue with his coaching badges as well, and I think that'd be a perfect fit. And I look at again Michael Duff. I keep going back to Michael Duff because he were a man manager and he played improved. He did a lot of players, and I looked at last season, and again I look at Luke Connell. I know he's been injured. He's not been the same player. When you're wanting an head coach to come in, you wanting to play improve the personnel that you've got. And again, Darryl Clark, all good in intentions, very open on press conferences, but after a time, it was getting to a bit same old. What I didn't like is that when we were winning, and he was still saying, "Well, yeah, we should have done this." I'm like, "We've won," and one what sticks out in my mind this season, we won away at Lincoln, and it's always been a bogey ground for us at Lincoln. We won, and he came out and went, "Oh, yeah, it could have been a bit better for." I'm like, "We've won away, not a great ground, but we've come away." And I think sometimes if I were a player, I'd be thinking, "Hold on a minute, we've won. Yeah, we might not have played best at thing, but he's not naming players, but he's more or less aiming back at me." I think sometimes you can get back a bit. I won't say lose the dressing room because people said that, but I think a bit of an unrest. And as a player, I'm wanting a bit. All know what modern day footballers are like. Sometimes you need an arm, right shoulder. Got to approach them a bit differently, like now. And I think sometimes if you can upset a few players, then players are not playing to their full potential. As me as a fan, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oh, he's having a stinker of a game. Why aren't you doing this? You don't know what's going off in the background, kind of thing. So again, I think like what you said there, Rob, and I think a lot of Barnsley fans will relate to this. The next coach that comes in needs to be given time. It needs to be, you know, this is how I want to do. This is how I want to implement the game. But at the same time, the board, whether it be Neerav, whether it be, the sporting director, Mladen comes out and says, look, it's here for 2 year an option, of 3 year, whatever. But this is where we need to go. This season's going to be see if we can get into playoffs. This is where we're going to go. A couple of players have come in. You think, yeah, these are going to be. They're showing an intention. But I think if we go down the road again as an unknown manager comes in, and these players coming in, and it's going to be another season of what up, rather than we've got a bit of belief here. I think that's where they need to do a lot of readdressing to certain Barnsley fans, me included, as if to say, what is your intention to do? And it's like what you said there. It'd be great to see at end of the season here and have to sit down with an open interview and say, right, this is we understand we've gone wrong here, but there's going to be brighter and happier times going after this summer.
and I would also say that there's nothing wrong with aiming for the playoffs, in next season, because Birmingham's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Wickham suddenly are spending and have wealthy owners. So, one of them or Wrexham will be gone, maybe both. And it'll be a different division. It will be a different division next season. And then, your team's coming down. If it's Plymouth, let's say, they might be competitive again because,
Mm.
they do tend to be quite good in League One and then struggle a bit in the Championship. and there's one or two others who could be tricky if they come down, but there's not going to be a Birmingham. There's not going to be anything like that. It
No.
could be much more of an open division, and I think the aim should be we want to get in the playoffs. We want to try and win promotion, but if it doesn't happen, we're not going to panic
Mm.
and fire and hire again, because that can't be promotion or bust. You can't. And if financially, if you are in a struggling period where you are losing money as a football club, you keep adding to those losses by firing managers every single
Yeah.
year. That eats into your transfer budget. That eats into everything, the spend that you are going to pitch as a club. It can't always be hire and fire them. So there does need to be a plan. And I think the good thing about maybe going after someone like Paul Warren and hoping that you could bring him in is that I think with a manager like that, given everything that he's achieved in the game, and I think he's a tremendous manager. Uh, Again, disclaimer: known him a long time,
Mm.
but the results speak for themselves
Yeah.
at Rotherham United and at Derby. I think if you want to get a manager of that caliber, you have to be prepared to say, you are the guy. Like,
Mm.
what is it going to take? Like, set up, final
Mm.
say on transfers. What do you think about the academy?
Yeah.
How are we going to, we want to, what's your vision for everything? Because, we want you to lead it.
Mm.
And I think if you do that, then rather than it sort of the manager being a part of a bigger machine, and then the big machine is deciding a lot of the stuff, and the manager
Yeah.
just goes out there and coaches. Uh, I don't know. That's personally not how I would do things.
No, exactly. Yeah.
I would appoint a manager who, like, you are the man, and let him decide what he wants to do. He
Yeah.
might go, you know what, I don't want to deal with that. That's not really my bag. That,
Mm.
can you look after that for me?
Yeah.
I'll focus on this, and this,
Yeah.
and you guys deal with this, and then you let him decide what he wants to be involved in, and you buy in, and you create a supportive environment. This is not a Barnsley thing, by the way. This is a football thing.
Yeah.
The idea of this supportive environment. I couldn't succeed in my job, and I suspect there's probably
Mm.
people listening to this. If you thought you're coming in every day and you were like, I don't know, a bad day at the office away from the sack all of the time,
Yeah.
and that's how football seems to exist these days.
Mm.
Football seems to live in this world where managers are constantly looking over the shoulder. You can't. That's not conducive with success. You have to set up a situation where you bring the right manager in, who has the right ideas to run, like you say, a modern dressing room, which is a different dressing room to what it was in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to have a plan for recruitment, and you have to have a plan for playing, and you have to have a plan for training, and you have to be fit, and you have to be able to press, and you have to be able to play a bit of football, and you have to be able to mix things up and be adjustable. You can't be strict and rigid with these tactics these days. And if you have the manager in who understands all of that stuff, you then say, right, this is a project for us. This is a journey that we're going to go on together. It can't be, right, you're the next guy. Good luck. You're going to
Mm.
need it. And in 9 months, if you ain't doing it,
Yeah.
off you
See you
go,
later.
mate. Gosh, you can't run it like that. But there's so many clubs who do run it like that. And
Yeah.
it's balmy. It's absolutely
Yeah.
balmy.
It's balmy. Rob, it's been a pleasure talking to you, mate. I have to get you on probably at end of season and see what's happening and where we are going. But yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, mate. I could talk to you probably all day about football and stuff like that. But no, I really do appreciate taking time out of your day for chatting with us, mate. Really do.
No, my pleasure, Neil. Anytime you want to have a chat, just give me a nudge, and I'll jump on, mate.
Brilliant, appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Leave your comments below. Let us know your thoughts on what we've discussed. As always, see you on next show. One thing left to say, you Reds.